Hello everyone, my name is Rahul. In this video, let's look at how to use environment-specific variables in Create React App and the Azure DevOps pipeline. In the last video, we looked at how to set up an automated build pipeline using Azure DevOps for a Create React App. We'll add on to that and add some environment-specific variables for your Create React application. Let's start back where we left off last time. Here's the build deploy in the Azure DevOps. Let's open up the project in VS Code. I've run this project using npm start and it's all as we've left last time. Let's add in an environment specific variable for the title for the time being. Usually you would add environment specific values for URLs or anything else in the config. But for now, we'll just stick with adding a title. Let's head back to the code. Open up the index.html from the public folder and add a script tag under head. Let's add a window.myConfig object as a JSON object in here. So let's say title for now and say this is the local dev and save this. Under source, let's add a new file config.js which can be used to get the config values. Const config and we'll use the window.myConfig object. Let's export this config so we can use it in other places. If you had TypeScript, you could use here to type define your configuration values and make sure they are statically typed. Heading back to app.js, let's get the value in the application and show that as part of type. To use that, we need to first import the config object and then use that under here. So for now, I'll just make this here and say config.title. So let's save this all. All the files are saved. Let's head back and you can see local dev appearing here. Let's push this code up into GitHub, adding configuration. Before we do that, for the index.html file, we need to replace this in each environment. So let's make a copy of the index.html file and call it index.release. Under here, for local dev, we'll be replacing this in the DevOps pipeline. So let's use a pattern match for this to replace that. So I'll use the pattern which starts hash, bracket, title, and then close it with bracket and hash. Let's save this and now push this all into GitHub. All the code is now pushed up, so let's go to the Azure DevOps. Under pipelines, let's edit the existing pipeline. You can see this has automatically triggered a build since we have set it up for automated build on the master branch. While that's happening, we can do an edit and update this pipeline on the master branch. So we now need to replace the index.release.html as the index file because we want that to be replaced on using the variables. To do that, let's use the command line task. The default copy tasks does not allow you to rename a file while copying it. So I'll use a command line task and add some commands. Or let's say replace index.html. So we first need to move into the directory. Let's use pushd, use the variable UI source that we had defined in the YML file, and we need to move into the public folder. So let's say public. To rename the file, let's use the mv command and say index.release.html to index.html. That should copy and replace that file. Let's pop out of the directory and save this. That adds a new task here before the build step, which would be good enough for us. Save this, directly commit to master and hit save. Let's trigger off a new build using this. You can see the new command line tasks which replaces the file. That works as expected, so we should see that the published artifact, the index.release, is the new file that we've added. The build is done. Let's go back to the artifacts and download the zip file. Let's open that up and you can see it's using the hash bracket that we had used in the index.release.html file. Now that that's all good, let's go to the release step in DevOps. The automated build has kicked off a new release which is getting deployed into the test environment. The automated build that happened triggered off a release which has now pushed up a new version which has the hash bracket title. We need to replace this. So let's edit the pipeline. First add a variable and say title, which is what our key is. This is a test environment, so I'll give the value test. And the scope is only for the test stage, so let's select test. Going back to the tasks, we now need to replace the index.html file with the variable from here. Since in the build step we had pushed up as an archive file, first we need to unzip this and then continue with our process. So let's add a task to unzip the files. If you search for the archival task, you can see the extract files which can be used for that. So let's add that in. Make sure that comes up before the deploy step. It extracts all the zip folder. Let's select a destination folder for that. So into build deploy, so let's say OK and give /release. Make sure we copy this, and the deploy step also uses the same package or folder that we are using. So now that's done. Let's add the next task to replace tokens. Adding the replace tokens tasks, we can replace the variables in index.html file based on these patterns that we had specified there. We need to replace that in this directory because that's where we extracted it to. We just need to replace the index.html file, and if you scroll down and look at the advanced, it already uses the hash bracket and bracket hash prefix that I had used. That should be good, so let's hit save and create a new release. Now it's downloading the artifacts and then extracting them into the folder that we specified, after which it will replace the tokens and then deploy it into the Azure App Service. So the replace tokens has replaced one token in the file that we specified. So let's go to the React app again and refresh this to see if it all works. Now it shows the test as we have specified. If you have a different environment here, you would go to the pipeline and edit this and create a new environment. You can clone this if you want and specify that as a manual only trigger, and you can say this is staging environment, for example. So if we need to add a new variable for the staging environment, which it has already done, all we need to do is give it a value. So if you give that staging and hit save, go to the pipeline, create a new release which is created. Note that in the staging environment I'm deploying to the exact same Azure service. So it will be the same web app for now, but ideally you would have different web apps based on your environment. Let's go to the release task, which is now deploying again. This should not have made any change because it's the test environment that we've deployed again. So if we refresh it, we still see test. If we were to go back to the same release and promote that build to the staging environment and click deploy, this should now get the variable from the staging scope and apply that. So we should see this title as staging. With the release done, let's go to the React app, refresh that, and you can see it has updated to staging. Hope this helps you to set up environment specific variables for the Create React application and the Azure DevOps pipeline. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to be notified on the future of similar videos, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you.